Okay, hey guys, we got a pretty interesting video topic today. This came in from a viewer, Callum. He was talking to me in the comments of one of my other videos called something like, what do you want to do with your life? How to plan your path. It's pretty closely tied to the topic for today's video, so I'll link that at the end if you want to go watch it if you haven't seen it yet. This video kind of focuses on the problem. And that video is more about the solution. When I made the first video, the other one that's going to be linked, I wasn't intending on ever tying these two together directly, but that's kind of the action steps are in that other video, so it'd be a pretty good one to watch after this. But so Callum suggested that I talk about uncertainty, and a couple comments he made really stood out. He mentioned that uncertainty is high right now following geopolitical fears. So what do we do about it? How do we deal with uncertainty? And it seems like he kind of has an idea of what he thinks he should do. He briefly mentions is the best solution to stick to the current plan, maintain your current habits, and regularly invest into the S&P 500. So maybe this question came from the whole, what was it, like a 10% dip is kind of going on, I think out of tariff fears and government shutdown fears here in the US. So kind of a big topic, but I told him he hit the nail right on the head. I think uncertainty is a very large problem for a lot of people, not even just within their finances, just in their daily lives, in so many other aspects of their lives. So we're going to start touching on that today and see what we can do about it, knowing that it's such a big topic. I'm not going to promise I can solve it all, but maybe you'll find something that'll help. So the second question that he put in his comment, how do we deal with uncertainty? And I think I'm going to try to lay the framework for a proactive mindset that seemed to help me, and it came from a book that I read a while ago that was written by a lot wiser and smarter man than myself. I actually have one copy of it here. It's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. This is actually a 1989 edition that I took off my father-in-law's bookshelf a couple years ago, and had every intention to give it back, but I still have it. So hopefully he's not missing it. But one idea that really struck home in that book that I've used the last few years is, I believe he calls it something slightly different, but I'm going to call it your circle of concern versus your circle of control. And I think one of the first things, it's a really hard step to do. It can take quite a while, but it's kind of that awareness of what is within your control and what are you concerned about that's outside of your control. And worrying and stressing about those things that are, I have a sheet of paper here just in case I want to draw it, but I think the idea is simple enough where if your circle of concern is very large and your circle of control, or as he calls it in his book, the circle of influence, I believe, is smaller than what you're concerned about. Part of the reason things might be worrying you so much, or just feel stressed out about the way things are going, is you're spending time in that region between the two circles where there's nothing for you to do about it except be worried about it. So the lack of action you can take is part of the problem. So I guess the idea is to spend as much time as possible on things that you actually can control or influence, depending on whose wording you're using. So for geopolitical fears, that's a huge one. Unless you're some kind of congressman or diplomat, or hold some kind of office, well, you could do the responsible thing and learn about what's going on, make a wise decision when you exercise your right to vote. I'm assuming everyone watching these videos right now is living in the US, but If that's not the case, you can let me know in the comments. But once you get beyond that level, unless you plan on taking, like a local small government position, like on a city council, some of those global issues they're just too big for one person to solve. Now that doesn't mean that we don't do our best to do what's right and have some kind of effect. Like, we can't just say, oh, the problem's too big, so I get to sit on my butt and do nothing, and that's just the way it is. No, it's mostly, well, you don't want to focus so much on those things that you forget to focus on the things that you can control. You want to shift your time down into that inner circle, so that if let's say you're 80% in the circle of concern, 20% in the circle of control, how can we get 70-30 and 60-40, and then maybe someday you can get it 80 within the circle of control and only 20 within the circle of concern. That's where all the worry and uncertainty seems to happen. You're never gonna get it 100% just within the circle of control. That's unrealistic, but we want to be spending most of our time there. So I guess a financial example is, if you've ever heard someone say, well, I would invest for my future, I would save for retirement and do all these things, but inflation is gonna just destroy it all anyway, so I'll just spend my money. I won't save anything, I'll just live it up. It's like, well, there's a long enough history of the effects of inflation that it's just part of the game at this point. You can't set inflation yourself, but you can learn to plan around it, to account for it, and come out ahead of it if you accept the fact that it's outside of your immediate control to actually change the overall inflation. But what you can control is maybe you need to save a little bit more, maybe you need to draw a little bit less in the future. You need to keep less money in a savings account that is not keeping up with inflation, and be a little bit more accepting of the risk of investing in the stock market, because that's one of your best abilities to come out ahead of inflation, one of your best chances. So that's just a brief kind of example of, there are things you can do about it, and if you don't do those, it looks bad from the outside if someone is complaining about something but they're unwilling to take the steps that they do have at their disposal in order to improve their situation. And what's funny is, according to the author of this book, and I feel like I've seen it too, where my son must have woke up from his nap. I can hear him over there. But when you spend more time in your circle of control, I think this is why the author calls it the circle of influence, is people will see you being effective in your life there, and that area of influence and control will grow. And so the example or the idea is, say you do want to create change somewhere, it basically boils down to the statement of, if you've got your home life, if you've got your stuff under control, and you look like you know what you're doing, and you actually do know what you're doing, people will be more willing to recruit your help and ask you to work on bigger problems than just your own personal little problems at home. Which I don't mean that in a demeaning way. No one has, like, people's problems at home, these little personal ones, are not actually little personal problems. They're all problems that we have to work on and solve, but we don't get to work on the big ones until we prove that we can handle the small ones. And I think that's the idea there. And it's funny how when you do that, at least for me, I can't speak for anyone else, but when you make progress just at the base level for yourself, it gives me some relief. So when I do things like save for the future, and the stock market is being a little volatile, and I hear people online, saying inflation, it's going to ruin everything. Housing prices, it's not fair. our parents and grandparents had it so much easier. It's like, maybe that is all true. Let's assume it's all true. Does that mean that you should go out and spend that $300 on, living it up on the weekend versus putting it into some sort of savings or investing account? It doesn't give you a right to make bad decisions. So, yeah, there's another book written by a guy called Bill Burnett. Maybe I'm not pronouncing it right. But some of these things, like the geopolitical fears, or some of those things where it's like, it's just kind of the way it is right now. He calls them gravity problems. Just like gravity, ultimately you can't get rid of it. You can't really fight it. If a human tried to fly, they're always going to fall down. So you learn to deal with it and work around it. And maybe that doesn't feel like a very actionable answer to Callum's question or his concern, but yeah, he mentions in there, should we maintain our habits, maintain and stick to the plan? And I think generally that's the right sentiment, but it kind of depends on the habits and the plan. It's hard to know this yourself it's really hard to sit in a room by yourself and be like, well, is my plan good? Sometimes you need just to compare it to something else or have a sounding board with someone. But if you have bad habits and a bad plan, I'd say no, it's not worth, like, sometimes change is needed. But he mentions regular investments into the S&P 500, I think specifically related to what's been happening the last couple weeks. And I would say, yeah, stick to the plan there. Never sell just because the market's going down. That's actually a time to buy. So in my situation, my example, my personal experience to share with you is, well, I saw the market drop. Last time I looked at it, it was like 6,100 was the S&P 500 index. And now it's like 5,600 something and some change. And I wondered, well, maybe I should put more funds, maybe I should buy more. And I'm in a situation where my main goal right now, my plan that I want to stick to and I've decided to stick to, is to save up some liquid cash for when I transition out of my engineering career to a full-time financial coach. And there's still some work that needs to be done in order to get to that point, and part of that work is just saving up some cash on hand, keeping it in the checking account, which doesn't keep up with inflation. I won't be able to take advantage of this market dip, but I know that based on what I want for my life, that's what I need that money to do for me right now. So my money is a tool to get where I want to go in life, and the next major step is that transition, probably 1 to 2 years, but if it happened faster, that'd be great too. So I can rest easy knowing that I've already done the proactive work of creating that plan. I've played that game in my mind of the whole market, timing, following it, looking how often do I even go online and check what it's doing. Still probably a little too often, but I know I can rest easy knowing that I've focused on what I can control and I've set that plan. And now it's still tempting. Like I say all these things, but I still saw the market drop. I'm like, wait, maybe I should adjust the plan a little bit. But so far I haven't acted on that. I've just stayed the course, because I know I can trust that money is doing what I need it to do for me. So hopefully that, let me know, is that insightful, is that helpful at all? Part of me feels like I'm not in a position to give this type of advice at all, but I'm just trying to share what seemed to help me. I know that's not going to be the ultimate answer that just makes, oh, now I'll never be worried again since I watched this video. Thanks, Mike, this is great. That's not the case. That's not what I'm trying to present this as, but maybe just a slight perspective shift when there's a lot of crazy things going on. So, is there anything else? I guess I think I'll cut this one here right now. We're already at 15 minutes and I was trying to make a short video this time. But if you haven't seen that other one, what do you want to do with your life? how to find your path, whatever it's called. I'll just put that right here right now, and that one is that's kind of the next step. Let's say you've said well, now I can't put it right there because I'm rambling still, but let's say that you've decided, okay, let's try this, just focus on what I can control. The next video is basically shows the tool I use to kind of write down my goals and my plan, and reel it back into things that we can focus on to help improve our lives quicker than if we try to worry about and apply ourselves to those problems that are beyond our abilities at the moment. So now we'll put that video somewhere right here, and we'll talk to you in the next one.